A much maligned coordinator for the University of Alabama has been named as a Broyles Award winning finalist. We'll tell you who it is and then just convey shock right now.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Still mid-move, tired, battling through it. I hear sometimes when you're exhausted that there's a second wind. Still looking for mine.
Yeah, I'm lots of times I need that first wind. Anywho, Jimmy, Pete Golding has been named a Broyles Award-winning finalist.
Well, a Broyles Award finalist.
A Broyles Award finalist. Yeah, I don't know why I said award-winning. I did that twice, and each time I said it, I was thinking in my head, I was like, "That's so stupid. Why would you say it that way? It makes no sense."
Better story. It's a better story if he wins.
But I said award-winning finalist, so I guess it kind of works. Because he could win it, and he is a finalist. Regardless, it's both deserved and puzzling. And I don't know another way to say it because statistically, I think it's correct. If another team had these stats that Alabama has, I think everybody would be like, man, this is one of the hottest names on the coaching circuit. But as Alabama fans, we know on multiple occasions we've given up big play. Even the Ole Miss game, and the defense saved the day in the end, certainly. But even in the Ole Miss game, Ole Miss drove practically the length of the field and set themselves up for a potential game-winning touchdown. So, right. Obviously they had two plays. I mean, forget the fact that they gave up more points than they have in 100 and some odd years of football against Tennessee. That Tennessee in two plays got in field goal position. LSU, every time we had a chance to stop them to make the game be a final in favor of Alabama, we couldn't do it. And then in overtime, we couldn't stop a play that we should know pretty well because people have used it against us before. And LSU has used that play before, or Brian Kelly has used that play before against Florida State when he was at Notre Dame to win a game. So, it's again, big picture, 95% of the time, our defense is pretty dang good. That 5% is a real pain in the butt, though.
It does seem that Alabama struggles trying to close the deal on defense. I don't know what goes into choosing the finalists for the Broyles. I really don't. I will say in defense of Pete, first of all, he doesn't need defense. He's a Broyles Award finalist. All right. But he's a good recruiter for sure. He's actually developed into one of the best recruiters on the staff. I think 3 or 4 years ago, we might have said the opposite, right? But he's improved really each cycle. And I think as we stand here today, Luke, probably one of our top 2 or 3 recruiters on the staff, arguably even number 1. I don't think the Broyles takes that into consideration. I don't think so. But if they do, then some of it is explained because he is a very good recruiter. Secondly, if you look at Alabama's overall numbers, they're not bad. They're top 15 in total defense, scoring defense. I think although those efficiency numbers, they're even better than that. So I think you could potentially – now, understand, I believe there are 22 finalists, so that's a lot. Now, obviously, some of those guys will be offense, but let's just say it's 11 on offense and 11 on defense. Is Alabama top 11 defense? Probably when you look at every single analysis out there, maybe right on the borderline, and then factor in, if they do, his recruiting. I think that's where you could sort of, justify this to an extent. But, hey, and I say this as somebody that has supported and defended Pete quite a bit. Look, the defense is underachieved. The defense is underachieved based on what we all expected all spring and all summer in terms of what we thought the defense would look like, the numbers we thought they'd put up. We thought this could be the best defense we've had since 2016. It is not. We thought Will Anderson might be a Heisman finalist. No, he's not. I would say that the defense has been, if I was going to use, I think it's fair to say disappointing. Now, the ultra critics, the loudest critics, the uber critics, they go way too far in their criticisms. It's not anything approaching as bad as they say that it is, and I can't believe I waste any energy at all reading it, memorizing it. It's silly. But extremists are silly, right? Whether you're pro Pete and extremist or anti Pete extremist, you're not getting it. But I don't think Golding is deserving of this award at this particular time. I don't. So I think it's not accurate, I guess I would say. Mute.
So here's what I was just thinking while you were saying that. Like, if the Broyles Award Committee, if they do like people or potential employers do for their employees, where they do like a social media search or an internet search to see their history, they'll come across Alabama message boards and be like, Pete, we feel like you deserve this award, but we have checked the message boards and I'm sorry.
You're incorrect.
It turns out you're awful.
Don't you love that? I laugh. It's really because my job with On3 is so tied into the message board. It's kind of my thing. And then there's that Fanville commercial right now where they, they're looking for the guy and he's out throwing the rocks, in the lake, and they find him and he's not taking the loss hard enough. And that one guy says, "You haven't posted one insane rant on the message board." I laugh every single time because I'm like, yeah, it's my job to literally read all those to make sure.
That is sort of very SEC shorts of Dr. Pepper to nail that. I mean, they did a good job with that. But I'm with you. I don't know. Whatever the opposite of the Broyles Award, I want to give to Bill O'Brien. I want Frank Broyles to attack Bill O'Brien from the grave.
Hey, if you think about it this way,
Frank Broyles.
It's a funny thing. I mean, I'm not advocating anything here. I'm just saying people might disagree with this. But if you ask me right now, Jimmy, so go ahead and ask me. I'll tell you the question to ask me. Jimmy, who's done a better job? Who's done a better job with their unit this fall? Pete with the defense or Bill with the offense? My answer is Bill with the offense. I think he's done a better job than Pete. And this is why. He's had to work around Bryce being hurt. He's had to work around that. Bryce playing hurt. Bryce missing those games, having to get a freshman ready to at the spur of the moment to beat Arkansas on the road and then A&M at home. The wide receiver core has been a disappointment. Maybe that's partly his fault, but maybe they're just not good enough yet. He's got to work around that. He went from having a big back last year to two little backs this year. And add all that up, only 5 teams in college football have scored more points this season than Alabama, even around all that. So based on that alone, I think Bill's done a better job than Pete. Now, do I think both of them have done a great job? No, they haven't. Neither one of them have, really. But I'm not as critical as the literal critics are. I'm just saying, hey, Pete's nominated for the award. I think Bill's done a better job than Pete. I think Pete has more to work with, thanks primarily to the injury to Bryce's shoulder.
I think that's fair. I've got to get readjusted for this argument. I think that could be a fair argument, except I think you have to take it all into consideration. I would say Pete goes up against better offenses than Bill goes up against defenses. We didn't have to play Georgia this year. We didn't even have to play Florida, that I think has a pretty good defense. I mean, we got a Vandy. We got a Mississippi State that gives up a lot of points. We got an Ole Miss that typically gives up a lot of points, and we couldn't run on them. We could barely run on them. Now, we had some nice runs, but we didn't have a great running game. And when you talk about lack of a big back, I give you points for that, sure. My argument to that would be, I've seen Jamarian Miller play in scrub time, and he looks like a dude who can be the bigger back. I mean, he's not Eddie Lacy, but he looks like a rough and tumble kind of guy. If you need a bigger back, why don't you try him out? Why don't you give him a shot?
Well, that's why I'm not arguing. That's why I'm not arguing that he should win the Broyles Award nor be nominated for it. I don't think either one of them should be. I'm just saying. I can make an argument Bill's done a better job than Pete. Pete got nominated for the award. I don't think either way. If I'm picking which coach, this is a good question. This is probably what we should have done the whole time. Which coach on the team, which assistant coach deserves a Broyles nomination, if any of them? I would go Wolford, myself. That might be, and primarily on the basis of this number. I'm going to have to look this up because I keep butchering it. But Bryce was sacked last year around 40 times. I know that sounds outrageous and that can't be true, but I believe it's true. And I think the actual number is 42, to be honest. But I don't remember exactly. But he was sacked somewhere around that number last year. This year, he's been sacked 9 times. Nine times. That's a stunning improvement when you factor in that the left tackle, the best player on last year's offensive line, went to the NFL. I think the run blocking hasn't been great, although 3 weeks ago we were leading the nation in average yards per carry. So it can't be a complete disaster if you're leading the whole country in average yards per carry. But I think Wolford has done a fantastic job, and that's the guy I think on the T-Rob. I think at the corners has done pretty good because every corner we put on the field has been a good player, in my opinion. McKinstry, Arnold early, Rick's late. Gillespie keeps, having productive backs a little bit. But no, that's my strong answer. I mean, to me, it's almost like Eric Wolford in a walk, the more I think about it. I mean, in terms of like –
I want to add one thing to what you said, but I do need to tell everybody about Nugenics. Actually, before I tell everybody about Nugenics, I want to go ahead and say, yes, 42 times sack last year. He also played 15 games, and this year we're only what are we in? 10 games in. So we have 2 games left, and he missed essentially 2 games. He actually got hurt, ironically, almost getting sacked. So I think that should be taken into consideration.
Add 2 sacks. So he's been sacked basically about 1.2 times a game. So add 2 to 3 sacks. So let's say he's a 13 sacks after 10 games. It's still a dramatic.
Still a market improvement. I'm just saying there are 5 games left. Now, if 5 games left, if he were going to play the number of games he played last year. Okay, I got to tell everybody about Nugenics now, because Nugenics is a thing and they're a sponsor and they're awesome. Listen, I can tell you right now, you can look at me. My body is getting older. It is breaking down literally in front of you.
Oh gosh, put your clothes back on.
I know. I mean, people probably hate this Dodgers shirt I got on, but I hate baseball and I just have it for absolutely no reason. I don't even remember why I have it. But I am getting a bit of a dad bod, and which it makes sense because I got 4 children. I'm feeling a little less like my old self. I don't have as much time to work out. My wife's in Argentina. Everybody that was going to help me with my daughter has COVID, so I'm sort of on my own here. That's all very true. But I want the energy and I want the body I once had. I once looked pretty good. I know what you see now, but I once was okay. So I've discovered Nugenics. I'm using it. You've seen the commercial for it. If you want more energy to counter the negative physical effects of aging, Nugenics Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock. It'll re-energize your workouts. You get better results at the gym and help you look and feel like the man you want to be. Nugenics Total T contains man-boosting key ingredients like Testofen. It has been validated in 5 clinical studies shown to boost free testosterone levels in men. Because Nugenics Total T boosts free testosterone that the aging process robs, you'll feel stronger and leaner, and you'll have more energy and drive and more passion too. Your partner will notice the difference, or your several partners will notice the difference. While every product professes quality, That's not in the script, but I mean, we've been talking about Lane Kiffin a lot. I figured I'd throw that in. While every product professes quality, many other products use generic ingredients that are often far less than clinical grade. With Nugenics Total T, you get the same clinical potency levels used in the trials. And Nugenics formulation is backed by 10 years of science and research. Nugenics Total T is the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Now get a complimentary bottle of Nugenics Total T when you text college to 231-231. Text now and get a bottle of Nugenics Thermo, their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast, absolutely free. Text college, that's COLLEGE, to 231-231, 231-231. Text college to 231-231. I'm telling you, you'll love it. Go check it out. All right, Jimmy.
Hey, next week, let's unless we come up with a better idea, a better third person, although I doubt we will. Let's get Settles on as a guest because he needs to pitch his book because everybody needs Aaron's book anyway. Let's have Settles on as a guest, and then we're going to do that thing we talked about where Settles will be the guy on the driving range, and he bumps into Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie, and you, of course, are the big hurt Frank Thomas, and I'll be little Doug Flutie, and Settles will be the guy on the driving range is like, holy moly, I'm out here hitting golf balls, and right here's Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie, holy moly, and then we'll have the script. I'll get the commercial, and then we'll have a script, and we'll send it to Aaron. Then Aaron will play that part, and then you be the big hurt, and I'll be Flutie, and let's do that commercial next week when it's Nugenics Day.
I really love that idea. In fact, when you said that at first, I was like, Jimmy's about to say we should get Frank Thomas on the podcast, didn't he?
Well, does he still live in Birmingham?
Does Frank live in Birmingham? I don't know.
Well, he's from Birmingham. I mean, he's from there. Yeah. Now, I assume he probably lives in Chicago. It's probably where he should live. But and
it sounds like he's living where all the women are. But anyway,
Jimmy. Hey Frank, it's the Locked On Bama guys.
We know that you're big into baseball and played at Auburn, but we'd like to talk to you about Alabama football.
Would you be on our Alabama football show to talk about your Nugenics commercial?
All right. Yeah, we'd like to talk to you about Testofen, if you don't mind. By the way, I do have a story. Some people don't like it when I tell unrelated Bama football stories. I'm going to save it to the end because I think it's funny, and it's anyway. Okay, Jimmy. On AL.com, they do this thing by the numbers that I always think is so cool, like after each week, and they give a certain number and say why it's significant. Listen to this stat. The number was 8. It says 8 Alabama games this century have included fewer than 325 yards for the Crimson Tide offense and at least 400 yards for the opponent's offense. Alabama lost the previous 7, but the Tide defeated Ole Miss 30-24 on Saturday. Against the Rebels, Alabama only gained 317 yards while Ole Miss gained 403. The other Alabama games since 2000 that met those numbers include losses to Auburn in 17, LSU in 07, Oklahoma State in 06, LSU and Auburn in 03, and LSU and Mississippi State in 2000. What strikes me there is like 07, first of all, 07 LSU is one of the best games ever. It was awesome. And I don't remember being that anemic offensively, but I guess when you return a punt for a touchdown, maybe it covers up some flaws. But 07, 06, 03, and 2000 were all awful seasons. In 2017, we win the national championship, but I think that that Auburn game that's mentioned in those stats is so interesting to me because I think that Auburn game is when we all decided, oh my God, we might not really have a quarterback that can actually pass the American football. Now, Jalen, his NFL career notwithstanding, was not a good passing quarterback at that time. And if we had known what Tua would turn out to be, we probably would have started Tua somewhere in there. But I just find that very interesting that this is the first time. Even in 17, we won the national championship. We all know about that. But this is probably the best team that is won with those numbers. I mean, you got to be a really good team to win with those numbers.
Yeah, and I would think, just the premise of, hey, you got 300, they got 400, but you win the game anyway. I would say that premise starts with special teams, that you probably did something big on special teams, or there was a lot of turnovers by the 400-yard team that gave the 300-yard team short fields. And weirdly, in this particular game, correct me if I'm wrong, from last Saturday, neither one of those things happened. Now, I will say that a huge chunk of Ole Miss's yards seemed to come on that last possession or two, which is typical of Alabama. It wasn't like they ran up and down the field the entire game. I think a lot of it was at the end, and that's where they outgained Alabama. But to me, again, it speaks to this, Luke. We're not great, and that's been my biggest point of the whole season. I think there's so much focus on the two losses, where you lost by one play on the road to top 10 teams. That's not a disaster. People that think that's a disastrous season, I sentence you to watch 2003 Alabama, or 2000 Alabama is actually the season you should be made to watch. That's a disaster where you went in preseason top 10 and you can't beat Southern Miss. They beat you something like 21-0. That's a disaster. Losing on the road to two top 10 teams by one play, that's just football. But is it like, oh, Jimmy, so you're saying everything's fine? No, I'm not saying everything's fine, because I've watched the whole season. The whole season, Alabama has not played fine. Alabama hasn't played to the standard the whole season. They've done a good job to win the games they've won, because those games didn't seem very winnable at times. And once again, the Ole Miss game is another example of that. You get outgained by over 100 yards on the road, you're probably going to lose. Somehow we didn't. That's a testament to the players that made plays at the times they needed to be made. But people that want to focus on those two losses as all the evidence they need that the program has gone to pot, that's really silly and just not true. It's the season as a whole, and it's just not been great. Alabama hasn't played great at any point in the year, frankly.
Jimmy, I need to go ahead and tell everybody about betonline.net. It's your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer to esports to MMA, whatever you want. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at betonline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix in. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right. Why did I hit mute? I hit mute like before I started talking. People probably do that all the time anyway.
It's like autopilot for you.
That's true. Basketball game tonight, Alabama against South Alabama. We're recording this at 5:30, so before the game. I suspect Alabama will play well. I'm looking forward to seeing this game on TV down in Mobile. I think that's awesome. LeBaron Philon will be in the audience tonight, in the crowd. That's awesome. In the audience, in the crowd. Anywho, another thing I found out, I asked this question on the Bama Online message board. I didn't know, you may have already known. Philon, who is one of the top probably 15 players in the country for next year down in Baker. He's a fabulous player. First of all, he and R.J. Johnson played against each other. It was either Monday or Sunday. R.J. had 38 points. Philon had 47 points. And Johnson's team won out of Huntsville. But what a game. And Philon is also the cousin of Darius Philon. And if anybody follows recruiting on here like Jimmy and I do, y'all remember that Darius Philon is the one that was – he was essentially committed to Alabama, and we basically said, hey, we need you to gray shirt. And because we took a dude whose name escapes me out of Virginia. It started with K, and his first name started with K, and his second name was who? Corin Curvin. That's it. All I could remember was the K and the K, but I couldn't remember the name. And Curvin didn't really end up doing much. And Philon went to Arkansas, kicked chicken, and then went to the pros and played very, very well, specifically for the Chargers. So, yeah, we messed that up. But according to our friends over at BOL, it doesn't appear that, even though they're cousins, it doesn't appear that whatever went down there is going to affect his recruitment very much.
Yeah, Darius was such an outstanding player. That was a bit of a miss by us. But I will say this, not defending Alabama on it, and not saying that Philon wouldn't have found a way to be a great player at Alabama. I'm sure he would have. And by the way, I was a big Philon fan the whole time. I was one of his fans that was pushing Philon. That whole junior and senior year he had at Viger. Good player, but he was also a weird fit schematically in what we do. I think some of his success at Arkansas and in the NFL is because he played outside defensive end in an even alignment, a 4-3. At Alabama, he had to play inside in our 3-4 alignment. I'm not so sure that would have been a great fit for him, and that might have been part of the reason we were a little skittish about Darius's chances for success at Alabama, though we did want him. All Alabama, even people have to understand, is a gray shirt. That is a scholarship offer. It's a full scholarship. It's just your reporting date is different. Your reporting date is in January and not in August. That's all that means. It's not really as dramatic as some make it out to be, but that's neither here nor there. I'd much rather talk about LeBaron. What a talent. I mean, what a talent. I think he's the best. He's the best player in Mobile since DeMarcus Cousins. And I hate claiming DeMarcus Cousins because, as Luke knows from that area, DeMarcus really from Birmingham. He just played, I think, his junior and senior year, or maybe even just a senior year at LaFleur in Mobile. But DeMarcus was really spent most of his amateur school career, in Birmingham. Philon's the best player, certainly since him down here, better than even Barry Dunning last year, who was a really good player at McGill, who signed with Arkansas and is doing really well. But Philon's a different level, man, and maybe Alabama doesn't sign it. This is how you know Philon's good. I'm not so much worried about Philon choosing Auburn, and he might. That doesn't worry me. Here's what worries me, Luke, is Philon choosing Kansas. That's what worries me, or Michigan State, or North Carolina. I mean, that's how good Philon is. You got to worry about losing him to the Rolls-Royce programs of college basketball, not just, the other local teams. But about basketball tonight, really excited because Alabama's been playing very well in the first two games. Heck of a challenge. South Alabama almost beat Alabama last year in Coleman. Now you got to play the Jags in the Mitchell Center in Mobile. Strange. South has played in Mobile. I mean, Alabama's played at the Mitchell Center before in Mobile, but not against South. It was kind of a tournament situation, and Alabama under Nate has agreed to play the in-state schools even in their own place. I think it's a 2-for-1. So South will be back in Tuscaloosa next year. South's pretty good program. I really like their coach. I wish South was getting more attention and maybe winning a little bit more, because I think the whole state would be enamored with Richie Riley. He's super smart. He's a great interview. He's a basketball savant. I think when basketball's over, he's going to be great in the media.
Jimmy, I got to tell this story very quickly because it's look, for those who don't know, my mom had to undergo a double mastectomy a few weeks ago. And she also, they found some unrelated cancer in some other parts of her body. She's doing well. Certainly not out of the woods, but she's doing well. She's in good spirits. And, it's hard, but it's one of those things. She does also have to undergo radiation and chemo. So she has just started her radiation therapy. And my father, who still works full-time at the company where I work,
you did say the story was funny.
Yeah, it's getting there. My father hired a guy that we know to drive her to the hospital and to drive her just wherever she wants to go, because mom, just to get out and about. She can't really drive yet. Well, my mom has one of those cars that is a push to start, but you just have to have the keys in the car. So I get a call from the driver. Yesterday I was in Montgomery, and he said, "Are you around?" I said, "No, I'm in Montgomery." He said, "Uh-oh." And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Well, I dropped your mom off at radiation, and she took the keys to her car. Because if you have a push to start, if you don't cut the car off when they leave with the keys, it'll still run. But when you cut it off next time, it won't start." And he drove to Burger King. And so he drove to Burger King. his car stopped. And I said, well, have you called mom to make sure she has the keys? You know, the keys could be maybe like stuffed in something and maybe the car's not picking it up, whatever. He said, I did call your mom, but she left her phone in the car. And so long story short, he calls my dad. My dad's stressed out because, you know, he's got so much going on at work, then this stuff with mom, and he's really worried. And he's just, anyway, they get it all situated. So this morning I'm talking to my father about it. And I can tell my dad's stressed whenever he does this. He's like puts his hands in prayer and he puts them on his head, almost like land shark. And he said, God bless her, but your mom is the only woman who in this moment would take her car keys and leave her phone. He said, if he had done any other combination, like take her keys and her phone or leave her keys and her phone, there's no problem. But she did the only thing that made it so it's a huge problem. And I mean, you have to laugh because and mom was like, and I said, Mom, you have never, as long as I've known you, taken your keys out of your car. Why? We have never locked our house in Alexander City ever because our philosophy, I don't lock the house.
I want to start now, pal.
But the philosophy is if you want to get in the house to get something, it's not like you're going to go up to a locked door and be like, oh man, you know, if you want to get in and break it, you'll break in. Right. Plus, I got Simply Safe. I'm not worried about anything. But
cool segue.
I know that's how you throw in a sponsor. But that's so funny to me. Dad was so frustrated this morning. He's like, how do you do the two things that make it impossible for anybody to do anything?
Is this guy still up at Burger King?
No, I think Dad ended up getting him. He felt like leaving him, I think, but no, it wasn't his fault either. It was just a bad coincidence. But anyway, you know, you got to have some levity in moments like this, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, all right, that's going to do it for today's podcast, everybody. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you subscribing. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you making us your first listen. And until tomorrow, roll tide.
Roll tide.